So thanks for taking the time to do this, and congratulations on the release of the phenomenally good new album, Wither on the Vine. It's not even been a week since release, 30th September. We are 6 days since the release. How have you found the reception to it so far?
Yeah, really positive. There's some reviews in, read yours obviously. Thank you very much. And yeah, like really positive. Still waiting on reviews to come out really, because I know that there was a ton of releases that all come out like end of last week. So there's just, I guess, like a backlog. So we're still waiting on like some of the the bigger magazines and blogs and stuff to come out with reviews. But everything I've seen so far has been like really positive. So that's great. Yeah, super happy.
Yeah, you're not wrong about kind of that week was an intense week of releases. So there's always that kind of like thing where you almost get buried if you aren't the size of, say, Slipknot, who released their album on the 30th as well and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been noticing as well the reception's been really, really positive, particularly not so much on the review front necessarily, more on the sort of fan listener comment section on social media and aspects like that. Is that something you've been reading? Do you pay attention much to that?
Yeah, I do. Like, I know probably some musicians just put stuff out there and then maybe read very little reviews or comments, but I'm reading every one of them essentially, just because, well, one thing, like, we've been sitting on the record for a year almost before it came out, so I'm just curious to hear what people think of it. And obviously it was a while since our last record, so it's just curiosity, yeah, and like the fans that have been into the band for the first couple of albums, they've like supported us by buying merch and stuff over the years, even when we were inactive. So I'm just just curious to see comments and what they think. And yeah, it's been great though, like really positive, like I said.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, it's such early days. We're not even got close to the dust settling. This whole period, the build to an album release, and then the period after, it's such a long experience. Why? What meant that you had to sit in the album for a year? Is it purely what we all tend to think it is, the pandemic?
No, not really. No, it was more, well, sorry, kind of is the answer. So, because we finished the record like more or less this time last year, and then we spent a couple of months sort of label hunting. So we sent us like some different people we thought might be interested, and in the end there was like quite a bit of interest, which was really sort of reassuring and kind of nice. But that got kind of sorted pretty quickly once like Candlelight came along and I got talking to Darren and stuff. It was mainly that we wanted the physical copies, like the vinyl and everything, to come out all at once. And obviously there's a huge delay on vinyl production at the minute. Part of that was possibly due to the pandemic, but mainly due to the war in Ukraine. So like nickel supplies for the stampers or whatever, for actually stamping the records. So that meant that there was like, it was 7 or 8 months out from delivery, which is longer than it had been, I guess, a few years ago. So mainly it was because we had a slot then for September, and we wanted everything to come out all at once. If we could have released it probably, say, I don't know, May or June if we wanted to, if it was just digital and then vinyl was going to come. But we thought at this stage no one's heard anything in a few years anyway, so we may as well just wait. There's no reason not to. So yeah, mainly that. So I think war in Ukraine and possibly pandemic, like supply issues and things, adding to the lead time basically.
Yeah, it's the boring aspect of the industry, really, isn't it? This delays that come and just end up holding things. And what you say makes complete sense. Why put it out just digitally when you can just wait a couple more months and then drop everything at once? It certainly, I think, paid off and will over time.
I think, like not every band, I suppose. Like I've seen bands just putting the digital out first and then taking pre-orders for the vinyl if their situation is like they're currently touring or they're active and it's like they want to keep pushing things along, as opposed to having 6 or 7 months of nothing. But for us, because it had been a few years since our last record anyway, it was fine just to wait because we didn't have anything else lined up, so that was fine.
You didn't feel any pressure or any expectation from a fan base?
Not really, because like I say, it had been like six or 7 years or something. So it was like, what's another 6 months? You know? I mean, some people didn't even think we were putting anything. We were ever going to do another album. I mean, at one point I was like not sure even, but no, I think yeah, people were just happy to, you know, do it.
Well, it is out now, and having heard the album myself, I can't help but think you were on a creative high, probably like no other when it came to creating it. Was this the case, and was there anything specific that kind of made the writing period so fruitful?
I mean, would I describe it as fruitful? Because it was sort of like it was over a couple of years really. And then there was like a burst at the end once everything was like 50 or 60% done. And then we had studio time booked. It's like, right, get these songs like properly hammered home and finished and stuff. But I don't really know. I think this time around it just like really put the hours in, you know, like spent a lot of time on pre-production, which was the big difference this time around. So like for the first record, it was like mostly half of it was the stuff that we had in our first demos when the band started. So half the album was kind of done, and then the last like 2-3 tracks were sort of done as we approached the studio kind of quickly. Second album was done in like 11 weeks, like written and recorded. So it was like a huge rush. There's no pre-production. We were just like going into the rehearsal room, bashing stuff out. This one, because the band was kind of on a semi hiatus anyway, and then also we entered the pandemic where everything just seemed to stop. It was just seemed like a natural, like good point to like reset, if you like, and just take our time over stuff. So we ended up with like full demos for the whole record, like everything from bass, like textures, piano and stuff, like all those little extras were all demoed. So going into that level of detail, I suppose, like really helped and made the difference, I think, this time around. And then as well as that, like compositionally, we just tried to widen the margins a bit and just remove any sort of preconceived barriers we had over what we should be doing, what it should sound like. And you know, that was that was kind of helpful in terms of putting the stuff together. And then as well as that, I'd done like a side project between our last album and this one, which is like a pure sort of like straight up heavy metal worship, like early 80s Dio type thing. And that kind of helped me get some things out of my system, that because one of the things that I was sort of critical of in the past with us was maybe I was trying to cram too many influences into the band, or trying to like satisfy too many creative urges. So stripping out that like straight up heavy metal kind of thing made me more comfortable, like pushing the sound of this record into its own sort of like more like dark sort of doomy, mature sort of phase, if you like. So that's kind of the context of how this was written and how it came about. If that makes sense.
In those early days, the creation, the early stages of With or on the Vine, did you have a vision of what you wanted it to be? And if so, what did that look like?
Initially, not really, and that was kind of the problem. Like there was a conversation I was having with myself where it was like, what's the point of this project now? Like, does it have anything useful to say? Like, where is it going? So I didn't really know. And like I say, then I just sort of stripped everything back, and was kind of like feeling like, well, when you're inactive, you're separated from like an audience and everything, so you can kind of feel a little bit isolated. And sometimes it feels like nobody's listening, or you don't have anybody that's interested in music. So you're just like, well, if I really just want to satisfy myself and satisfy ourselves here as a band, I would just do really whatever we want to do. So what will that look like? So we just started putting a couple of songs together, and then once the first couple of tracks kind of came together, and they were pulling slightly different flavors and influences from some of the previous stuff, that's when I kind of knew, okay, yeah, there's something kind of interesting here. So for example, one of the first songs that was fully completed instrumentally was Floodlands. And I thought that was an interesting track, something that we hadn't done before, encompassed some of the elements that we had previously that I thought were good and interesting. So from then onwards, it was like, okay, I can kind of see where this is maybe going to go now. And I kind of had an idea in my head, like buzzwords in my head of what I wanted it to kind of be like. And then it sort of progressed from there, essentially. So I sort of had a framework from then on.
So would you say that kind of open-mind aspect, that see what happens kind of direction, steered where you were going at times? And did you find there were instances, particularly considering it was spread over a couple of years, instances where outside forces kind of dictated where you went?
I don't know really. I guess like I say, I just we had a framework in mind of things that we wanted to do with it and things that we wanted to avoid. So there was like certain kinds of tracks, like on the last record, and we were like, let's kind of leave that behind. That's, you know, we've done that. And then there were elements that we wanted to bring in. So things like, you know, I was like, okay, like our drummer was a great extreme metal drummer, and really good at blast beats and things. And I was like, we should try and marry that up with some of the, you know, the clean vocals that we have, because that's kind of interesting. But there's nothing really in terms of external like influences or forces. It was just, you know, how can we do something here that's interesting for ourselves, if you like, and kind of going on the basis that, like I say, be a little bit jaded, going, maybe nobody's going to hear this anyway, so it may as well just be whatever kind of gives us a buzz. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, it's great. It's great. It just makes me think that when you have that kind of mindset, there's almost a sense that when you're thinking, okay, maybe people may never hear this or may never come to anything, that you might then lack focus, or that might dictate the focus. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily result in something workable. So yeah. Was that a really challenging aspect of creating the album, where you ended up having to feel like you were creating something that was going to end up going out?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, it definitely, it wasn't a case where it was just like, let's just put down any old shit that we think is, you know, like, well, here's a funk section, we don't care, that's fine. Not so much that there. It was more, I guess, like I say, when the first couple of tracks came together, it sort of, there was a direction and a pathway, but initially getting to that point was sort of like anything was sort of fair game. One thing that I kind of realized afterwards as well is, as the band, sometimes you think that you're like being way more adventurous than you actually are. Like sometimes in the context of writing, you think that you're bringing in more extreme influences than was really the case. So for example, like I remember at the time thinking this organ would be really cool. There's some organ and, you know, piano and stuff, and there's a cello section, and, you know, that's really cool because I haven't done that before, and I thought this is going to be really different. But really, it's, the whole thing still has our DNA on it, so it's not like, it doesn't sound as far removed or as out there as you think at the time. And that's what kind of one thing I sort of realized from talking to people that heard the album, reading reviews. It's not as much of a departure really as I kind of thought initially. You just sometimes you think that these things are, as I say, more of a departure than they really are. But once you have like mine and Sarah's guitar playing and Crum's voice and stuff there's still kind of a signature anyway. So it's still, the whole thing still sort of sounds like Darkest Era in a sense, but it's just evolved a little bit. You know?
I mean, it's cliche almost to say, but ultimately you gave yourself creative freedom. You know, when you're going to be working on a Darkest Era album, as much as you might try to drag those outside influences in, you ultimately know as well, and how you feel you're going to have a specific sound. So I'm not surprised that the majority of people are getting that vibe from it. It's clear, even though it's well, it's your best work to date, that creative freedom really paid off. But what were some of the more challenging aspects then overall, do you think? Was it just the too much time?
Well, having a deadline and those kind of things can push things on for sure. Really though, like this time we didn't want to book the studio until we were absolutely sure that we had something solid, you know what I mean? But this time around, the whole writing process was different, simply because with the first two records, most of us were kind of living in the same vicinity. And we were still kind of like young, like early mid-20s, and we're still in that sort of mode of like, you can go and practice every week, just get into a room on a Sunday or a Saturday. Nobody really has obligations, you know, real serious obligations. So no problem, you can meet up for like 3 or 4 hours every week and just bash stuff out. Somebody brings a riff, just hammer songs out week in, week out. And that's kind of how we did it in the past, really. We didn't demo stuff or record stuff at home. So I was a bit rubbish with technology in the beginning as well, and I just couldn't be arsed sitting and like recording riffs on Logic and stuff. And I was really reluctant to get into that, even though some of the other guys, like Cameron, a drummer, for example, was like, this would be way easier if you would do this, you know, and he was right. But so this time around, everything was written in isolation. So not like COVID isolation, but we were all living in different parts of the country. Sarah and Daniel were living in England and Wales, and 3 of us were in different parts of Northern Ireland. So it was all like recording little demos ourselves and then sending them back and forth. So like when we went into the studio, we hadn't played the songs together as a band at all. I jammed them out with a drummer, but that was really it. So that was kind of a new way of doing things, which, yeah, it made it work out fine, but definitely different to how we used to do it, really.
When you reflect on that differences, is that something you can take positives from, e.g. stuff from that you've learned this time around, forced to learn, and that you think, okay, well, that did work really nicely for us, and I would love to take that into the future?
Well, I think this is just going to be the way of it now, because like, I mean, we all have real life commitments, which is one of the reasons why we kind of went on hiatus in the first place. But you know, a couple of us have families and things, everybody's got jobs or studying or whatever. So this is going to be the way of it. We're never really going to be able to meet up and just jam for the hell of it. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
So this is how we'll do things. If there's another record, this is how it'll be done. People will be demoing parts and then sending them via Dropbox and all the rest of it. And I'm kind of comfortable with that now. And I definitely, for me, it was like a learning process, like writing things on my own and then bringing them to everybody else in this sort of form. And I'm kind of, like I say, comfortable with that now. I think it works well. I definitely work better having like things demoed and then being able to take a bit of space from them and then come back and stuff. So yeah, I think that's the way forward. And like a lot of bands are doing that as well. I don't know, unless it's like bands of like teenagers now, I don't know if anybody's really just meeting up every week and hammering stuff out, you know, and that's the way to do it, and not doing home recordings and stuff. So which is a shame, because I kind of like, part of me does miss those like days where you're kind of just a big gang and you're hanging out, drinking beers and playing music every week, and that's like what you do. Like I do kind of miss that part of it. But yeah, in terms of if we do another record, this would be the way it's done, and I'll be happy enough.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's a very rare that I speak to any band, even if they're new or been around 20, 30 odd years, that still just go, oh yeah, what we do is we get to the lockup every week and just hammer out tracks that way. Just isn't how it's done. Real life commitments are too important, and it's very hard to make, as sad as it is, music your day job.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and then also like something we talk about a lot here is about younger bands coming through and comparing like this old man thing, which I am now, it feels like, but I'm comparing the scene now to how it was when we were coming up, and it just feels like at least when we were starting out, there was a lot of activity with other bands, and you know, loads of people forming bands and like playing gigs and stuff. And I'm not sure whether, like in Belfast, for example, there are some, but I'm not sure there's that scene of like 18, 19, 20-year-olds like every week playing Slayer covers and you know, I don't know. I think it's things of the scene has changed a lot since then in general. So, but yeah, like I say, for us, this is just where we're at now. That's all right. You know.
I'm just glad you're comfortable with it. That's the most important thing. And if it's it works for you and makes you happy, then hey, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean the other side project thing. Part of that was to sort of try and like replace some of those. So like we played like a bunch of covers together, and the plan originally was that we would not meet up every week and rehearse, but like we would just get together every once in a while and write some heavy metal, but also just like, play some covers and just have a laugh.
Yeah.
That's still the plan, but again, things have gotten kind of busy with this and that. But so I'm hoping that project will satisfy some of those like bass metal urges. If you like.
I mean, you're a musician, you're an artist. These urges to try and do different things are gonna always come. I think they're always just part and parcel of you. So you've got to find some outlet.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I say, I miss those kind of days where you're just meeting up in a room, like drinking beer, making noise, whatever. So.
On the album, has there been one specific track so far that you've seen listeners take to that perhaps you didn't necessarily think would be the one they took to?
Not really. It's still kind of early days in terms of like reviews and feedback and things. But some people have like pointed out With Tragedy in Our Blood as a song that they really like. And once we kind of recorded that, I was like, no, that maybe didn't turn out as well as I had in my head. But yeah, people kind of dig that. Yeah, not. It's too early, I think, to say really. But I mean, people have, in terms of people's favorite songs that I've been talking to so far, there's quite a range. So people have said like Tithanus, The Collapse, Path Me to Roots, Floodlands. So there's like 3 or 4 songs which people seem to prefer, which is good.
It will be, yeah, you're right. It's not even been a week. So I think a couple of months down the line, it's going to be fascinating to see when that settles down, when people really go, that's the one. I'm going to try, though. I'm going to try, because it's hard for me to pick out one specific track that truly stands out more than any other on the album. But I am going to give it a shot, because I had it a little bit longer than most people. So it is The Collapse, my personal favorite track on the album, uplifting, depressing, and equal measures. And that's it. I kind of want to pick your brains about that specific track in regards to the creation of it, how it came together. Was it a straightforward process?
Yeah, there was one of the tracks that came together, like, well, instrumentally at least, it came together the quickest. I had that one fully demoed more or less on Logic, like pretty early on, and that one came from just the main riff as far as I remember. So like the main guitar riff at the start, and then I just built it from there basically. That was the only track really. So our bassist Daniel like excelled himself, I personally think, with like the bass on this record. Done an amazing job. This one was the only song that I wrote some bass bits for though. The little kind of bass like in the verse, sort of it's like sort of a rhythmic little thing. I kind of wrote that, and then put like that sort of goth clean guitar part on top. And yeah, so like had most of the parts of that pretty quickly. For whatever reason, it just came together like that. But Crumb, I have to give credit to him, like did all of the work there on the vocals, wrote the vocal melody for that one. For the chorus, when we were recording that, so we just had the like the sort of the main vocal line, but none of the choral stuff. So in the studio, we recorded the lead line, and then myself and Sarah were going to pick up her son from daycare. So it's going to be like an hour and a half round trip to go there and whatever else. So we left Crumb like as he just finished that lead vocal line, and then by the time we came back, we had that whole choral thing like written and recorded and doubled. So there's something like, I think it's like 20 vocal lines, because there's like 2 different 5-part harmonies, and then he doubled each one. And I always say it's like that scene in The Simpsons where like Krusty the Clown is recording the voice for like the Krusty doll, and he just goes into the studio and like bashes it out and leaves, and the guy's like, okay, Krusty, we're ready to go. So he just smashed it. So I think, yeah, Crumb really shines in that one. And the vocals, it was a cool demo instrumentally, but I think the vocals really make it. and yeah, the outro riff is just like a wee wink and a nod to something that Opeth might do in terms of the melody, like they're one of my favorite bands. I love those kind of harmonized lead parts that they do, like lead melodies, which is like I want more of that. So that's not a million miles away from that kind of thing. So yeah, and again, vocally on the verse, trying something different there as well, as opposed to like the straight up, bellowing vocal. We thought we'd just strip it down, kind of do something a bit more subtle. Yeah, it seemed to work well. There's a lot of different things in there for us.
Ask me next week, I'll have a different favorite. It is such a strong album overall. When you reflect on the period from start all those years ago to last week release date, what does Wither on a Vine mean to you? And I guess, what do you hope long term it will mean for Darkest Era?
I guess it's the so the album, it's the most happy I've been with any of our albums. Like, I can say that with some sort of sense of objectivity, because I remember sort of how I felt after each album. Definitely, this feels like, it has sort of the strongest identity of its own, which is really important. It feels like what we've been kind of like building towards, yeah, I'm just like really happy with it. I think it's thematically and everything else, it's a dark reflection, obviously, on where I feel like the world is at the minute. So I feel like its themes and things are like relevant. Which is nice. So I feel like people might get something out of it in that sense, compared to maybe some of the other records. Hopefully it'll just kind of reignite things for us a little bit, and be maybe the catalyst that gets us to the next stage of getting some shows and tours and festivals and things, and just gets the band in front of people again, really. So that's what that was my one sort of hope with this record, was that it would just we would get to play the songs in front of people. So fingers crossed that happens. But I think job one was like, I really wanted to make an album that would stand over and go, look, 100% happy with this. Couldn't have done anything, more to make it a good record. So, job done in that sense. And I think everyone's happy. The songs are as good as they could have been at that point in time. So, but yeah, hopefully we get to play some shows and play the songs in front of people.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. I really am glad to hear that as well. Going into 2023, we now having happily a reset of things like the festival season, the hangover of COVID, with all the old bookings are now wiped clean. So there's a stronger possibility that you'll be able to get on these bills. Do we have much in a way to look forward to for the remainder of 2022 in regards to Darkest Era? And what does 2023 look like as it pertains to the band?
It's hard to say right now. Like we've done some shows already this year, because we'd always got some gig offers in the past. We declined a lot of them because it got to a point where I was like, it's been so long since our last record, I don't feel like playing gigs with these songs anymore. Like, it's no interest, but once we had this kind of new record on the horizon, it's like, right, well, we should maybe do some shows. So we did a handful this year. We have our album launch show in Belfast Saturday week.
Yeah.
And then that's really it for this year. And then next year, there's a couple of things on the horizon that we're going to confirm, and just basically fill up some weekends and some stuff here and there. So there will be things next year. Nothing that we can announce yet. But like you say, the sort of slate is clean now, because there isn't that backlog of 2 years of festivals that are, being rebooked. So hopefully we should have some festival slots and things. What I would say is it's still like incredibly difficult for bands of our size, really, because there's just so much music out there, so many bands, and everyone's trying to, like everyone's trying to tour right now, like literally everyone. And what you notice as well is that like a lot of bigger bands are sort of buddying up to share risk and share gear and share like resources and share dates and things, which means there maybe isn't as many opportunities for like smaller bands like us to tag on to an opening slot or something as there might have been. It's tricky. Like we'll give it our best shot, but it's definitely tricky out there right now for everybody.
No, it is. It is the survival of smaller grassroots venues, not just in Ireland, as it's in the UK as well, and across Europe. I guess what we say is watch this space. Fingers crossed we get to see you play all around next year.
Sure, yeah, we will. Just we'll get there. We'll announce it in due course.
We'll get there. Yep, that's it. That's the line for the whole industry. I think sometimes at times we'll get there eventually.
Pretty much, yeah.
A last one, really, and completely unrelated to music. It's October. It's spooky season. Are you a Halloween fan, as in the season Halloween?
Yeah, absolutely. From 1st of September is like Halloween mode. You know, the Type O Negative records come out, and the Guns N' Roses records go back on the shelf. And, yeah, for sure. It's we live just across from like a huge park and stuff, so we get to, you know, to see everything unfold and everything. So yeah, I love Halloween.
What do you like to do around this period?
During like autumn in general.
Well, in the sort of Halloween window.
Halloween. Well, we've 2 young kids. But they're just starting to get old enough now that they kind of know what's going on with Halloween. So I guess we're gonna go like trick or treating with them around the neighborhood, which is going to be a lot of fun. Get them dressed up. Probably go to some other wee party or something like that there, and you know, stuff them full of sweets and things. So that's going to be fun for sure. And then if we get a chance, we might, I don't know, if there's a more adult-oriented Halloween party where we can have beer and listen to Sisters of Mercy or something, or I don't know. That could be cool, but yeah, we'll see. But no, Halloween, yeah, it's definitely. I think there's a period whenever you're younger where it's like stops being cool again.
Yeah.
After being like loads of fun, and then when you get older again, you sort of like, especially with kids and stuff, you rediscover. So
you just nailed it there. Kids make a big difference to enjoying it. But before you go, I just want to ask, because we GBHBL, horror is a major aspect of what we do. It's what we love. It's what we enjoy. So in my worst ghost-faced voice, what's your favorite scary movie?
Favorite scary movie? Don't know what my favorite would be. Like, I'll give you, well, I don't know, my Halloween favorites. So I'll always put on Ghostbusters, because it's like possibly one of the best movies ever made. We always put on The Devil Rides Out around this time of year. What else? Haxan, like old horror stuff usually. And then some recent like stuff that has been scary, I thought was like Hereditary or Midsommar, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, like camp 80s horror is always a good shout in this house. So yeah, anything like that is all good.
There's a wide array out there of camp 80s horror, and it's always interesting, you know, whenever I talk to horror with a lot of people, the likes of Hereditary and Midsommar, they come up a lot. I think they're some of the biggest, like not necessarily the biggest, but the most influential modern horror movies that seem to have resonated with a wide audience.
Yeah, I think there's an element to those, at least the end of Hereditary, and then in Midsommar there was an element of sort of like retro cult horror, I thought, and just how they were sort of shot and how they looked. I thought that was really cool. So, and I mean, after that, we went through a phase of like I say, watching just some really old cult stuff that kind of like, especially in the heavy metal sphere or whatever, was aware of but had never seen. So stuff like Blood and Satan's Claw,
yeah,
you know, those, and then some Hammer horror stuff, and was it like Witchfinder General, and
you ever seen The Devil's Reign?
Did I see The Devil's
Reign?
No, I haven't seen it.
That's a check that out. That is a crazy cult kind of one. Like had Anton LaVey as like a producer, or I think involved in it, and it like stars William Shatner and a really young John Travolta. But it's very occultish movie.
All right, yeah, I'll add it to my list. Sounds good.
I think it's like 70s as well, so quite old.
Yeah, yeah. Anything from that, like it just has a, I don't know, an aura about it. That's
Vibe.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Christopher Lee's in as well is always a good shot.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, Ed, I'm gonna let you get on with your day. Thank you so much for taking the time to do it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Wither on a Vine is out now by Candlelight Records. Check it out. It is spectacular. Thanks again, man.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?